Well, I'm going to be just meandering around sundry subjects that occur to me. And I was saying how last night, I attended a Bharatanatyam concert, which was beautiful with very, very experienced professional musicians. So it was quite a delight. And I suppose the difference between Western and Eastern cultural arts is that Indian art and culture is centered around religious or spiritual themes. So as the dance began, the theme was Ganesha, whose grace was flowing like a river that was expressed through the dance. And the dance is a drama because it's not only the footwork, but it's the mudras, the hand movements, it's the facial expressions, it's the whole presentation of it. And then the second theme was to do with the Devi Mahatmyam, that is Durga, whose name means fortress, taking all the weapons from Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and combating the threat of Mahishasura, the great, great demon. And then the final one was Krishna and Radha's love for each other. And the fourth theme was Krishna's play amongst the gopis. And also in his childhood, stealing the butter and so on and so forth. So all of these would be familiar stories that any Hindu would recognize. Then we have to say, well, why should we portray these truths through art and culture? Firstly, because it's impressive. It impresses our mind with a delight. It reminds us of these events, these stories, but it should take us a little deeper. So if we take the first theme, Ganesha, if I had given a talk afterwards, I might have asked, so did we experience that through divine grace, all our obstacles can be removed, like the flowing of a river? Can we experience that? If we did, then all the artists have done their job. Did we experience the fact that if we look carefully, we will find great, great asuras, demons within the mind, namely as Bhoga and Ashwarya, so desire, greed, and so on and so forth. All of these are great enemies to us. Do we recognize them when they arise in the mind? And then do we use the divine grace, the capacity of discernment, the sword of discrimination to destroy them and cut the head off? Note, Durga cuts the head off Mahishasura as a buffalo. He cuts the head off. Why? Because the head is the problem. The mind is the problem. It's our mind that has to be conquered and tamed. And then, of course, everything is restored. Order is restored, and calm is restored, peace is restored. Even if we apply it to today's situations, and there we can see on the news all kinds of difficulties, warring factions, and so on. It is all down really to this prophet-actor complex that says, I own this piece of land, or I hold this belief. And so in the Western world, from the 17th century, there was the great 30 Years' War. After the Reformation, the thinking people were appalled at the slaughter and division in Europe over whether there is transubstantiation, whether the Catholic Church holds the truth, whether the Protestant, whether it is other Luther and so on and so forth, who assert the Bible, and various differences are there. And so thinking people come to a conclusion, maybe not such a good conclusion, nevertheless a natural conclusion, that religion provokes violence. And then the New Age, New Atheist movement comes up after the 9/11, where fanatics come and fly their planes into World Trade Centers And from there, the whole theme of this violence comes up again. And Origen, a great famous 2nd, 3rd century Christian philosopher, theologian, he deals with this even prior to all of this. And he deals with it because there are references in the Jewish scriptures that are accepted by Christians to great acts of violence. And he says, well, those should be interpreted and viewed from the point of view of a self-sacrificing Savior Lord who descends to the depths of our humanity and is prepared to give up his life out of love. That's the theological conclusion. And then all the other events should be interpreted symbolically in this way, just as we would interpret that there wasn't literally necessarily a slaughter thousands and thousands of years ago by Durga coming down and a real demon being there and so on and so forth, all of this taking place in a different era. There are some people who will interpret it like that. But as we have just seen, we can take it in a much, much more profound way, a much more helpful way to say, what can we do? Something that happened thousands of years ago, what is it? What bearing does it have on us today? And the answer is nothing, unless we look at it as a kind of lesson for here and now and how we can apply it right here, right now. So if we have gotten the lesson of the Devi Mahatmyam from the dance, from this artistic expression, then all the artists have done their job. If you have felt the deep love relationship between Radha and Krishna, if you have been moved to tears by it, all the instrumentalists, the dancer has done its job. If you feel the playfulness in your own life of Krishna and the gopis and so on, then the artists have done their job. And I can assure you they did. It was a wonderful performance. It is only really through art and culture, through creativity, through imagination, that we can make a breakthrough to remove a veil of ignorance. And that is the purpose of the whole of Vedanta. It is the purpose of the Upanishads, that humankind must realize, you and I, we have to realize our own divine nature, this self. And that is so in every religion. It will be the same whether you are a Christian or a Muslim or whatever it is, whatever particular religious organization you belong to. It will not be about violence. There is no mystic who came to a conclusion, let me kill everybody who disagrees with me. Not at all. And so the investigation of the truth is the most fundamental thing that we can do. We do it through philosophy. Philosophy alone won't do it. We have to make a practice. We can do it through science. Science alone won't do unless we are prepared to understand the experiments, or at least take the scientists on their professional word. Currently in cosmology, there's a postulation that there was a massive Big Bang somewhere, but you and I were not around to see it. How is it that we may believe it? I personally don't, but most people do. And so we take it because intelligent, scholarly people have asserted it, presumably worked it out, done some experimentation, and presented it to us. And the problem that we have in modern science today is what we might call the rabbit out of the hat. You take, for example, I think it was 2016, Einstein had predicted, of course, way before that, 100 years before that, the existence of gravitational waves. And so there was a LIGO experiment with two very, very distant experimental apparatus, interferometers set up, and they succeeded in eliminating all the interference noises and catching what they saw as an event, two black holes, as it were, combining, crashing into each other, and creating gravitational waves, can we pick it up? And a community of about 1,000 scientists in a closed, confidential arena throughout the whole world were investigating this for some 6 months and not telling anybody, a closed secret, until they were confident we've eliminated all other possibilities. Now we'll make our announcement and pull the rabbit out of the hat with no transparency, leaving us in its wake, leaving us very doubtful. How is it you suddenly came up with this? No, hard work was necessary, which was not appreciated because the step-by-step experimental process was hidden. Now, if we apply that in every case to everything, step-by-step process is actually laid out for us in terms of this discovery of our divine self. And so this practice of the principles is completely necessary. So, and of all beings, man alone is most fitted to receive this knowledge of truth, be it scientific truth, be it philosophical truth, be it spiritual truth. We have the requisite instruments for it. We can apprehend it, but we can also comprehend it. It has to be reasonable, it has to be rational. So how do we evaluate whether something is true? The same way that science does. And that is why Swami Vivekananda, in his book on Raja Yoga, says this is the science of religion. Even the Bhagavad Gita, there's a chapter, the science and secret, the sovereign, the royal, the most supreme science and secret is now exposed, telling us all about the cosmos, all about your divine self, everything, nothing left out. No rabbit in the hat, no sudden surprise. And step by step, we have a ladder that is presented where we can step by step advance in our spiritual life. And with each step, we get a more profound understanding, like looking at a garden through a keyhole and seeing only a partial garden beyond it. But as this keyhole becomes bigger, or as we get closer to it, it looks as if it's getting bigger, more and more gets revealed. There's a story about the elephant, and the blind people. I think 5 blind people went to investigate what is an elephant. Of course, they were blind. Today, we see since 9/11 the coming up of neo-atheism on the same basis. Religion is violence. And without understanding fully, just superficially, that dogmatic religion, yes, can lead to violence. Exclusivism can lead to violence. But it's only one of many, many egoistic expressions that will lead to violence. If you attack me, I'll attack you. That kind of understanding, that kind of thinking. Well, if you insult me, I'll insult you back. Reciprocation. Well, where does that get anywhere? Sticks and stones will break my bones. Words will never hurt me. What's the problem? So is there a way I can look at people and the world in such a way that their inner reality gets revealed to me? I have to discover it in me first. And if I discover it in me, I discover it in everything, in everyone, everywhere. That's the point. So all of these devices, cultural devices, are there to fire up the imagination because we are living in a world of imagination. And some of that imagination is coming to a misleading conclusion about something, or a misinterpretation about something, or misinformation about something. It's true everywhere, even in the science world. You get the phrase, we have discovered dark energy. According to modern cosmology, using a mathematical formula, the cosmological constant called lambda. We have discovered dark energy. No, you haven't discovered. You have to take this word discover out. We have calculated on the presumption that it exists. And maybe it doesn't exist. It's a good explanation that there is some mysterious energy that is accelerating the expansion of the universe, or more accurately, the expansion of space. A very good explanation, no doubt. But can we find it? Can we experience it? So we have to take away some of these assertions and give us the flexibility and the openness and the joy of our own experimentation. So how do we experiment? Well, we take provisionally somebody's testimony. That constitutes scripture. Somebody says A, B, and C, and we realize these people were rishis who were intent on self-discovery, scientists, if you will. In Christianity, there was a Jesus who said, I am the Father are one. I have seen the Father. He who sees me has seen the Father. He says, the Father has seen me, that kind of language. We have seen a Ramakrishna of the 19th century, who experienced, through his own experimentation, everything. And we are able to study that in principle. But also, along with that, is a formula, like a car manual. You do this, you do that, you do the other thing. So scripture then becomes not only a testimony, it also becomes a manual. And we take up that methodology, and the methodology is fourfold. Do this by philosophy, says Vivekananda, by worship. He's summarizing these aspects. Philosophy, work, philosophy, worship, meditation, one or more, all of these can be free. Or philosophical analysis. So four yogas are described, corresponding to four capacities, if you like, of the mind. So these four things are presented. This is our method. We can choose either one, or we can choose all of them. Probably today we require as many tools as we can. All of them are required. That's okay. Let's do it. It's not a new idea. It's contained in the Bhagavad Gita also. And a twofold path is there in the Ishopanishad itself, saying if you wish to live 100 years, that's okay. But then you dedicate the fruits of all your activities. You renounce all of that. You say they don't belong to me. That's a path. And then the other path is clearly Jnana Yoga. So Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, Karma Bhakti may be combined. These two paths are there, and the same two paths are presented in the Bhagavad Gita as one system, one yoga. So this is the experiment we do. And then we can verify for ourselves whether it's true or not. And the verification doesn't come as a flash. It's not a rabbit out of the hat. It's a progressive thing. It happens bit by bit. Just as you reveal more of the garden beyond the keyhole, more and more and more and more, as you get closer and closer and closer, till the whole thing gets revealed. So what do the blind people do when they investigate the elephant? They make an interpretation by what they react to in terms of what they feel with their hands. They're devoid of sight. So they divide this elephant up, as it were, and have an argument over it. Ramakrishna tells that beautiful story of the chameleon. People come and they pass a tree and they see this reptile in the tree, this peculiar animal, and then they have a discussion. Did you see that creature in the tree? Oh yes, it was a beautiful blue color. Blue? I saw it as green. Somebody else says, no, I saw it as pink. Another one says, no, I saw it as red or orange. And they have a big debate about it. Finally, they recognize there's a man who lives under that tree. He would tell us. And as they approach this man, he says, you're all correct. Absolutely correct. The fact is, you never lived under the tree and observed properly that the chameleon changes its color according to its environment. It's a part of its defense mechanism, and it has this capacity to change its color. There are many examples beyond chameleon in nature that we have like that. Fish, certain species of fish have this characteristic. Certain insects have this character. The stick insect will just look like a stick, like a twig. And then if you study it closely, you'll see some movement is there. It doesn't just sit there forever. So nature has provided us with a number of defense mechanisms. And there must be some internal response, some internal intelligence that responds and says, in order to survive, I will do this. Now, it may not be in that sentence. You don't ask a chameleon, how did you decide, and your ancestors decide when to make this color change? At what part of your history did it? Bring out the records, please. The chameleon won't answer that. It happens spontaneously. We never question. How is it that we stand upright and walk and so on and so forth and have this capacity to communicate with each other vocally? No other animal seems to have it at that level of sophistication. We never question it. We take it for granted. So the system of verification has to be there. We take a credible authority. That's the first thing. Second thing, we can add inference to this. If you see a fire on the hilltop, you won't see it. You only see the smoke. You infer, okay, my conclusion is a fire must be there. There's no smoke without fire. I make a good inference. I make an inference, perhaps, all swans are white until I see a black swan. It only takes that one exception to destroy the whole thing. So, verification, only through the processing. There are some people who declare, on the basis that religion equals violence, there can be no God, simply because I never saw God. I have eyes to see, I have ears to see. If God were real, it would present himself. Some seemingly intelligent atheists declare, perhaps if I saw something written across the sky, I am here, I exist, perhaps I'll half believe, Thinking that what we call God is an external object, subject to verification. Put him in a test tube, see if it's acid or alkaline. Lick, no, I can't, I'm tasting nothing. Doesn't exist, therefore. Ramakrishna beautifully gives this example. He says, you see, even though in the daytime you won't see the stars, it does not mean they don't exist. So these people exploring the elephant will come to a conclusion. The elephant is like a big hosepipe. He felt the trunk, or like a big plantain leaf, feels the ear, like a rope feels the tail, like a pillar feels the leg, and so it goes on. But then you see somebody with sight, properly sight. In other words, somebody capable, and we are all capable, of viewing the totality, who see the entire thing. But you'll see two things. You'll see the elephant as the totality of parts, but you'll also see the amorphous space beyond it. So there's both the form of it and the space beyond. I was mentioning probably yesterday the Purusha Suktam, which describes the elephant is a totality, a total person, and yet it is a person made from name and form and function. It's, in other words, our universe. And then is the Nasadya Suktam, which declares the absolute nature. It says that in the beginning, darkness covered darkness. And we have no idea where it started from. Scientists who believe in the cosmology of the Big Bang have to resort to, you bring everything back to a point, singularity. We have no idea what's before that. Both are stuck. How do we get out of that stuck condition? We start off with seeing this world as a delightful expression, as a kind of play, and there we have to use our imagination. Now, the imagination is based on triggers. We go and see the yellow daffodils, for example, in the garden, and instantaneously some aesthetic thing comes up within us. Some sense of beauty and an elevation of the spirit comes about. Now, how does that happen? We don't bother to analyze it, we simply accept it. But when we study this flower very carefully, it is more than just what the eyes see. Look at the components that are required. First of all, our capacity to see the color and the variations in the color and the form. The capacity to study and wonder at its origin. How did it arise from simple molecular material, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, water, etc., all of that, carbon, all of that comes out, and how it knows how to make use of it, how it knows how to face the sun and get its rays, how it knows how the leaves know how to do its photosynthesis thing, how it knows its season. Somehow people say, oh, if you want the daffodils, or the tulips even, I think, you plant them way, way ahead. And from that, somehow, it knows how to do things. And you may say, how can it know? It doesn't have a brain. There's no neurology in it. No, it knows. How can you say it doesn't? How can you say it's not sentient? The wonderful support that Sister Nivedita gave to Jagadish Chandra Bose, who managed through experimentation to affirm that indeed plants have life, and indeed plants have sentiency and reactivity. And you can say, indeed, plants have pain. Indeed, plants have, without a nervous system, without any form of nervous system. You cannot define sentiency as equals something that possesses a nervous system. It doesn't make any sense. Then if you look at things from top down and say, consciousness, this must be evidence of consciousness itself, expressed as a kind of intelligence, expressed as a beauty because the beauty of all beauties is inside it, within it, expressing it as it. All the clues are there, all the signposts are there, all the evidence you ever want is there. And then if you extrapolate that to a totality, the Purusha, the cosmic person, based on the idea of relativity, general relativity, if you find something applicable here, you'll find it everywhere. That's a constant rule. That much you take for granted, only that much. Then you'll see the wonder of everything. At the moment, we're living in an age where wonder after wonder is being exposed to us. The wonder of exploring the depths of space through technology such as James Webb Telescope. We can see much more and puzzle over it. And that may shake some of our fundamental concepts. Good. That's the adventure and excitement of increasing your knowledge. And then, what about yourself? It's all very well to explore the depths of space, but what about the depths of your own mind? What about the depths of your own self? What about the depths beyond physicality, beyond psychology? What about the truth that you find internally in yourself? This is the spiritual path. It's the most necessary path you have to travel on until experientially you come across the same conclusion. Now I was presented with a book. The book is by Richard Rowe. There are some people who study the Vedanta from a Christian perspective. And Richard Rowe is well known as somebody who makes these explorations from a Christian point of view. But we come to one conclusion: he's a mystic, and the mystical conclusion will be one truth. And we shouldn't be surprised by it. You open a passage and you say, oh, that's Vedanta. Yes. These are the language used by Vedanta. Yes. This is the same language used by Ramakrishna. Yes. Should we be surprised? Not at all. Truth is one, regardless of how you approach it. So there's a passage here. It says, the Trinity, he says, beautifully undergoes negativity by a totality. Totally, and we can't emphasize the totally enough. A totally positive movement that never reverses its direction. There are skeptics who will take the Hindu Trinity and its plethora of gods, goddesses, etc., and the Christian Trinity as polytheism, three gods, not understanding the depth. And it's a depth which is produced from something which is entirely obvious. There is birth, there is life, there is death. I was talking to somebody this morning. He said, are we not just like rabbits, you find a rabbit dead on the road, and there are thousands and thousands of rabbits, and nobody writes an obituary for a rabbit, It led a good life, it was springing around and so on, and now I see a corpse. And that's a permanent thing. It's gone forever. Surely it happens to us. That kind of conclusion is quite natural, because the physicalist will say, we all are made from atoms and molecules, and all the elements that the stars produced is all combined in us and forms a kind of evolutionary species that runs around and hops around. Are we not just like that, running and hopping? Only if you go to the gym, probably. So, that's how it looks. The appearance of that is our final conclusion. We won't investigate anything further, such as, where are these atoms coming from? Where are the elements coming from? How is it that we have a species at all on the planet? How is it that we have water on the planet? How is it that we have certain behavioral characteristics? All of these are ignored. And when we come to a final conclusion that there is only consciousness being expressed, a top-down approach as opposed to a bottom-up approach, then it opens up a whole totality, like the blind people having this elephant being revealed to them. And so I mentioned earlier to the person who was here that 3 seems to be a special mathematical number. And so we have birth, we have life, we have death. We have a waking state, we have a dream, we have a dreamless sleep state. All 3s. Now, is it accidental? I don't think so. 7 is another thing. Listening to the concert last night, yes, only 7 notes are being used, variations within it, no doubt, semi-notes and so on. But 7 basic notes are there in Western and Eastern music. Sa re ga ma pa da ni, sa, like that, 7 notes. Do re mi fa sol la ti, 7 notes. 7 days of the week. Some mathematical thing about 7. When we explore the numerology, for example, of the Enneagram, we'll see that every fraction of 7 is decimalized to a pattern that the Enneagram describes. And within that is a pattern of 3. And we repeat our mantra 108 times. Why? Because these digits added together come to 9, and 9 itself is a multiple of 3 times 3, and describes the whole totality for us. 3 states of consciousness, omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, described as creation, preservation, and dissolution. And then 3 gunas. The whole universe is only made from 3 components according to our Sankhya philosophy, which we all accept. We disagree on final conclusion, but that much we all accept. 3 gunas. So what does he have to say about the Trinity? He says, our mixed pattern of forward and backward is illustrated through his scripture, which is the Bible, which often reverses its direction or undergoes itself. After a while, you will spot this naturally. But the divine generosity is not undone in the Trinity, who only gives. Then he says, God is always giving, even in those moments when we momentarily experience the inaccessibility of love, as if it were divine anger. People come to a peculiar conclusion, thinking God is human. So naturally, it's natural to think of God in this way. First of all, to think of this in an explanatory way as qualities. Many religions come to this conclusion. Qualities: omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, all beneficence, all merciful. Because these are the highest human qualities we would wish for. But then, to bring it closer to us in our understanding, we require a form. Swami Vivekananda says, if we were fish, we'd have a fish god. If we were buffaloes, we'd have a buffalo god. Since we're humans, we require a human god. Anthropomorphizing this entity is a natural thing and brings us closer. And those who see will say, yes, both form and formless. Both are true. Don't look only for the one. And when you look for the one, you're implying the other. When you see the totality of the elephant, you're implying the empty space beyond it. And when you see the empty space beyond it, you'll see that it's filled with a totality of moving, living entities. So we misinterpret and say, God is angry. The whole principle you see in Christianity, this word sin, people misunderstand the word. It comes from Greek, which means simply missing the mark. You have an ideal of perfection, you missed the mark. And unfortunately, it's become interpreted and associated as guilt. I did something wrong, guilt and shame and punishment. No, I missed the mark. The mark was there and I missed it. When you find yourself drawing these conclusions, thinking God is angry, and so on, even if it's divine anger, be close to your soul for a moment. It is you who are angry. You are angry at yourself at that moment. All of us probably go through that at least twice a day. Why did I do that? We accuse ourselves or blame it on God. Really? How can you see that theological argument or anti-theological argument? How can God allow suffering? How can a loving God allow humans to slaughter each other? Well, God has nothing to do with it. God is giving you a certain pocket money, energy, and so on. Please do something useful with it. And we decided, I hate my neighbor's nose and I'll cut his head off. How can you get out of this vicious cycle is a question. Now that is a very good question. The Vedanta series question answer, that question has come up now. Own your projections, those unto other people, those unto your own motives, and perhaps especially those unto God. In reality, God is the divine lure who is most equipped to pull you out of this circle of negativity. Lure meaning a device you put on the end of the rod for fishing. In reality, God is the divine lure who is most equipped to pull you out of this cycle of negativity. When you see yourself, in my language, spiraling downwards, then you pull yourself out. How? Not through personal effort. You open yourself up to divine grace that moves everything. That relieves you of stress. I don't have to handle it by myself. I can open it up to the divine grace and divine will and say, Lord, you handle it, please. Open the floodgates. But if you ascribe negativity unto God too, you're really in trouble spiritually because you've got no way out now without traversing, and he mentions Kubler-Ross's first 4 stages of both grief and dying. I gave a talk not so long ago on this death and dying subject, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a great expert on that, he is quoting. So what is it? First 4 stages, both of grief and of dying. I mentioned yesterday, one of the kleshas means clinging to life. we can't just say, I will not cling to life, because we value life so highly, and we have to acknowledge it's a natural human condition to fear death. But it's only because all the other obstacles have been entrenched, namely egoism, which says, I am the body. We made a definition, Patanjali's definition, mixing up the seer with the seen, identifying the seer with the object, namely body-mind. So he goes on, what are these? Denial, anger, bargaining, and depression, before you can get the fifth state, which is divine acceptance. We can value all of these stages. Why is there suffering? Natural response he's saying is Kubler-Ross's steps of disappointment, starting with denial. It couldn't happen to me. I can't believe it. Next, I believe it and I'm angry. And I'll blame God for it or somebody else. And then bargaining. Bargaining means let it not happen again or to me or something else. And here's the thing. I'll make you a supply agent and I'll do some commercial bargaining with you. So I'll make some porridge or something, offer it on a daily basis. I'll chant Shiva's name forever. And then, or at least for 40 days anyway, at least that much. I'll fast on Ekadashi, and then that's fine. And we'll get, we're all square, So I'll do that for you and you give it to me. There it is. I don't believe I'll get anything unless I pay for it. So let me pay for it, And every time I pay for it, I'll be thinking, will it come, will it come, will it come? Is it coming tomorrow? Am I getting the results? It's a self-defeating mechanism. And then depression, I haven't got it. I'll never get it. I'm in a miserable condition. But that has to be gone through. You can see it from the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, deep depression. Now, let's see if Arjun also goes through these stages. Denial. Yes, denial that this war is useful in any way. I can't believe I put myself in this situation nevertheless, and it only arrives when he sees the party opposite and realizes the implication of this war. Then anger, maybe even blaming. Then bargaining, even bargaining with Krishna. Let me withdraw, much better, making some justification for leaving this war alone. But finally, this depression resulting in shaking, not being able to hold the bow with all its implication of confusion. But then that yields the fifth stage because all along divine grace is there flowing. In this case, in the form of Krishna that stimulates it. But Krishna is always with us. And that leads to ultimately 18 chapters ending up in divine acceptance. So this now self-evident, or this now evident pattern is why so many of our contemporary spiritual teachers say that most of our problems are psychological in their manifestation. It's all to do with the mind. But spiritual in their solution. That's the answer. I feel mentally disturbed. I feel depressed. I feel stressed all the time. I am anxious. I worry. What will you do? I'll go and see a psychiatrist. What will he do? Explore these past things and give me some medication. But spiritual is the solution, he's saying. Most Christians, he says, of the Middle Ages more easily trusted the spiritual solution than we do now, but they seldom had the vocabulary to describe the psychological manifestations as we do today. We have come across many, many descriptions now for so-called psychological conditions. The one important condition that is being told, and that is isolation withdrawal syndrome. We used to call it shyness. But you have to put a syndrome on it now and deal with it. You have to say, life is problematic. We need a solution. But then the most medically minded spiritual teacher and philosopher, Buddha, had said, here, I'm your medicine dispenser, I'm your doctor, I recognize your suffering, I don't deny it. I see your pain, I know the symptom of pain, and I know what it's caused by. It's caused by a seeming assumption of a deficit in you, which we call desire, and struggling to fulfill it, struggling to be happy, struggling to get rid of this pain, is producing more pain. So what is my remedy? Firstly, there is a remedy. You don't just accept it. And here's my prescription. Here is the drug you should take. There are 8 drugs you have to take. And this is called the Eightfold Path. Right thinking, right meditation, right lifestyle, right morality, all of these kinds of things. Moral life, in other words, promoting this quality of sattva in your mind. You think it's an aberration of the brain? No, brain is just an organic, complex assembly of neurological things inside a bone structure called a skull. And when this body's life is gone, it will remain as something that you can open up, explore, dissect. They tried to maybe do that to Einstein's brain. Is there something special about Einstein's brain? Not really. A brain is a brain. And whether it's life in it or not, it's still just a piece of meat that sits there. And Holy Mother had a beautiful way of describing it. So 14 pounds, I forget how many she said. I think it's about 2 kilos of ash. That's all you have. That's all it is. So it's all to do with controlling your mind. You not being your mind, you can control it. You not being the car, you can drive it. You not being your piece of clothing, you can wear it. So we articulate, he says, the psychological dimension so well in so many ways that contemporary people are trapped in sophisticated and helpful descriptions of the manifestations, but have no one to surrender it all to. And he puts one in capitals, or at least capital O. There is no receiver station because we jumped off the divine water wheel and withdrew from the dance. He puts it beautifully. To sum it all up, he says, I do not believe that there is any wrath in God whatsoever. It's theologically impossible when God is Trinity. Now, we won't go into that, but I'll make a summary explanation of what that means. So, Trinity, Christian Trinity and Hindu Trinity are seen to be different theologically, but actually it's the same observation, that there is an elevating aspect in us, a kind of spirit, an energy. And when this energy is properly used, we call this a spirit which is holy, Holy Spirit. I don't think it belongs to you. It's infusing in you. It's infused in you. It comes to you in moments of inspiration. In yogic language, it is when the Kundalini starts pushing through the Sushumna, opening up your mental levels. There's a yogic language for it. So it's energy, we call it Shakti. So when we talk about Shiva as a third member of the Hindu Trinity, we are really talking about Shakti. We are really talking about Shiva's energy. We can describe it in many ways. We can describe it as Nataraja, Shiva dancing, or we can talk about it as the feminine counterpoint to it that comes out as Durga. We can talk about it as the energetic component. We can talk about it as the queen on the chessboard, where the king just sits. So there's no Shiva without the energy Shakti in that sense. And Shiva is the auspicious one, destroying all our ignorance, but at the same time, bringing out our Maya. So Parvati is really the corresponding Shakti to Shiva. You cannot have Shiva without the Shakti. And then life keeps going, you must have noticed. So there is a protecting field, something that enters into us, something that we call life, something that fills up everywhere, pervades everywhere, that we call Vishnu, the one that pervades everywhere, and manifests as waves, and from time to time comes out as huge waves that transform the rest of the wave field. We call Avatara, incarnation, a Jesus. The Son, as it were, the product of the cosmic mind. Cosmic mind, Logos, Word, being flesh and dwelling amongst us. And then we have to have an origin. There has to be some creative aspect, some creative movement, which we call life. It comes out as Brahma. If we have a clinging to life as a klesha, as an obstacle, it's because life, we notice, is precious, and life represents existence itself, and Brahma represents Sat, existence itself, and Vishnu represents Chit, the cosmic mind, the consciousness, the cosmic consciousness which is there, that manifests everywhere as life and keeps things moving. And then we have this bliss of the removal of our ignorance. And that is done by mobilization of Shakti or spirit. And that we get by opening. That we get by enriching spiritual life. Receiving the spirit. I don't see any difference personally between the Christian Trinity and the Hindu Trinity, because these are not theological things. These are experiential things. Noticing that there is birth, life, and death everywhere, we can see that these are not just random mistakes. We see this interconnection with everything. And therefore, this triune aspect we accept as a sophisticated understanding of the Supreme. And if you reduce it simply to polytheism, you haven't understood it well. But even Christians and Hindus make this mistake, separating these three things in a way. Saying that there are three gods. You ask a Hindu how many gods are there, they'll quote millions, 30 millions of them or something like that. No, not really. The Vedas are very accurate and poetic and beautiful. For example, most of you will have taken a bath or a shower today. If not, I highly recommend it. And what you will have done is, would you have taken it with an appreciation and a wonder, how is this water possible? How is this flowing to me at different temperatures? Is water not life? Should I not feel a sense of praise? Should I not sing a hymn of praise while doing this? Water being supplied to me. You may ask, where does it come from? If you are superficial, you say from the municipality. All right, but then you have to inquire who provides that. You come up with an arrangement where water is there in the ocean already supplied, making the world blue, making the earth blue from a distance, and having this arrangement of the sun, which evaporates the water, collects it nicely, moves it, shuffles it around the earth, deposits it as rainfall, that you may or may not complain about. But without that rainfall, you have no life. Most of your physical body is comprised of water. Most of your head, for most people, is comprised of empty space. So, I'm joking. I hope it's not. So here's the thing. Every experience is an opportunity to take your attention with a sense of complete elevation, a complete sense of aesthetic value of it, deep, deep appreciation and thankfulness that attunes your mind to its source and expression that we call in religion God. So with that we can conclude. So we will conclude Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be on all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om